Brian, you can mark the tape right here. Ohio State is going to beat them by 3 touchdowns, at least. Ohio State is going to absolutely bludgeon Michigan the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's college football show. I'm Dan Watkins. John McKechnie of Rotowire.com is alongside, as always. John, we have survived Chaos Month, or should it be called Spencer Rattler Month now, after the South Carolina Gamecocks just pulled off like the greatest back-to-back stretch in their program history. But what's up, man? How you doing? You ready for championship week?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, if there really is an agent of chaos, it's one Spencer Rattler. Unreal how that all worked out. Like the last few weeks, or maybe even this season, is just like a perfect encapsulation of him. Where it's like, yes, on one hand, he can beat anyone, and he can also lose to just about anyone as well, and be the reason for both of those results. But yeah, unbelievable stuff there. But yep, we are just about 50 hours away from kickoff of the SEC championship down here, just a few miles from me. I'm excited for that one, but we got some fun games on Friday night. And then, all day Saturday, we got crazy matchups. So I'm pumped. This should be a great weekend. It sets up nicely. And, last weekend was so good as well. So I'm excited to see what this one has in store.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one because if everything goes according to plan here, we know who the 4 teams are going to be, and it seems like it's going to go according to plan, but this is college football after all, so there could be like a wrench thrown in here somewhere. But do you agree with what the committee has done here? Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC, Ohio State, and Alabama sitting out.
Yes, because I would, I'll kind of work my way backwards. So I think that Ohio State, the only one loss coming against the second best team in the country, they absolutely should be that next team in if anyone slips up this weekend. And then with TCU, they are undefeated, and therefore they should be insulated. It would have been kind of on brand for the committee to somehow still put them at 4 and have USC at 3, but I'm glad that they made the right call and gave TCU its just desserts and gave all glory to the Hypnotoad, put them at 3. Michigan obviously deserving of being at 2, Dan. And then Georgia, they're the number 1 team in the country. So
yeah, we will. I do have a big old piece of humble pie to eat on this show, and I will dig into that in a few minutes, John. But the big news this week is expansion. It's official. It's happening. We are going to go to a 12-team playoff starting in 2 years from now in 2024. The Rose Bowl, they agreed to the deal. I think there was probably some bending of the knee there to keep the Rose Bowl in that time window, the 2 p.m. Pacific on New Year's Day, which it should be. We were talking about this before we started recording here. If there's one game in college football you do not screw with, it is the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's nothing better than the kickoff for the third quarter, the end of the third quarter in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. It just breathes new life into the new year. It's just timeless, so good. But as far as the 12-teamer is concerned, the news broke while I was on another podcast, so I haven't been able to dig into all of the ins and outs of it. But my understanding is that you need to be a conference champion to get a bye. Is that correct? So that means that Notre Dame and company can't get a bye. UConn can't get a bye in the college football playoff. So I mean, Jim Moore is coming for it. He'll be there. But point stands. I mean, it takes some of the juice out of the regular season, like the big games. It gives those games a bit of a safety net. Like Tennessee versus Georgia this year, that was like a de facto game to make it into the playoff. Games like that won't have as much juice, but we have playoffs now and like legitimate a bracket. We get on-campus games. I mean, that's pretty sweet. So, I mean, all things considered, I was relatively anti-expansion for a while, but then I kind of started to change my tune when we started to see the same exact teams in the playoff. Like, basically is just changing between 6, 7 teams with 2 of them like always being fixtures, 3 of them really always being fixtures in the playoffs. So it's good to see that this mix up and have some more programs have a legitimate opportunity to at least say they've made the playoff.
Yeah, I love the expansion. I love the on-campus playoff games. Those are going to be a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to go to if you're fortunate enough to do that. But I think it would really help this year because going into this weekend, there's talks of like, why should Michigan play this game on Saturday against Purdue? Why should USC even risk going out there Friday night against Utah? Where you're going forward, there's this expansion. They'd be playing for that bye this weekend and trying to get that week off and get to the next round.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a totally legitimate counterpoint. It does put the onus on USC and TCU in particular to kind of get things done this weekend. I think Michigan could probably lose this game. I don't think they will, but they could in theory lose this game and probably still get in. But I don't think the same could be said for the likes of TCU and USC. So your reward for having a tremendous regular season is you have to put it out all on the line against the other best team in your conference in a one-shot deal. That's tough. You got to be queasy if you're a USC or TCU fan going into this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the other thing too, getting that bye is so important. We see this in the NFL all the time. I think it's something like in the last 7 years, like 12 of the 14 Super Bowl teams are going in as one of those teams that had the bye too.
Right. It makes it so much harder to have that run because playoff games, whether it's college now or NFL, like that, they are so in a vacuum draining on a team. Like you have to give everything for that one game, and then your reward is the next week having to get off the mat and do it again. So making that run, it's really tough. Having that bye is so beneficial. These college players, they're not used to playing that many games. So I think that the bye is even all the more important at that stage.
All right, let's get to it. Let me have this big old piece of humble pie here. Brian, you can mark the tape right here. Ohio State is going to beat them by 3 touchdowns, at least. Ohio State is going to absolutely bludgeon Michigan the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I was wrong. All right. I was wrong. Michigan is the better team right now. They are the better team than Ohio State. I vastly underestimated the coaching mismatch. Excuse me. Jim Harbaugh, clearly the far superior coach compared to the born on third base thinking he hit a triple Ryan at Ohio State, to steal Harbaugh's phrase there from a year ago. I mean, John, did Ohio State and that coaching staff even bother to like make an adjustment at halftime, or did they all just like go into their offices and just not talk to each other or anything? Because did they think they were going to be able to coast on that 3-point lead that they had? But here is Ohio State's drives in the second half. Ready? Punt, field goal, interception, doing absolutely nothing. Ryan Day, I don't even know what he's doing at this point. There's calls now that he should be on the hot seat. I think those are completely valid when you look at his record. I think it's kind of fraudulent that he's 45-5 in his career. You actually break that down and look at the important games. Not so good. 1-2 against Michigan. He hasn't beaten them since 2019. That play calling in the second half, which I'm just going to continue to mention because it was just awful watching Ohio State try to move the football. CJ Stroud, not only did he throw away a Heisman Trophy on Saturday with that just terrible interception there in the red zone, but he also possibly threw away a top 10 spot in the NFL draft coming up this spring too. And then but I will say this, he did get very little help from some of his pass catchers. How many passes did Cade Stover let ricochet off his hands Saturday? He was doing his best 2015 Scott Chandler frying pan hands impression on the field there in Columbus.
That's a pull.
Yeah, it was brutal, and it was really tough to watch. I was getting text. I posted that video from like week 8. Brian did a great job clipping that for us with my prediction that it would be a 3. I was right. It was a 3 touchdown game, just in the wrong way. But I was getting text messages from people that I've never talked about college football with in my entire life. So the Ohio State, you really let me down. But I will say this: the best part and like possibly the funniest moment of the college football season, though, did happen in that game. It was when the camera pans up to Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
Like, here it is. This is why he's here. He's got to come up with like the game plan of his life in the second half to contain Michigan, and then boom, 75-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was just a 10-second just beautiful framing of this Ohio State season, because like all the talk coming into that game also had been as to why this game would be different this year was, hey, like Ohio State can actually play defense. They can bow up this year. And you have a Michigan team that really doesn't have its engine in Blake Corum available in any appreciable sense. You have a guy in J.J. McCarthy who hadn't been asked to do anything basically this entire season, and you have to let it rip. And Donovan Edwards with an injured right thumb, which probably not optimal when you're a ball carrier and trying to like protect the ball and everything. He comes out there and yeah, basically just shuts the door on Ohio State's season. And yeah, like just all of those things. CJ Stroud coming back down to earth in pretty embarrassing fashion. I think that we're going to start to kind of hear the same tropes that we tend to apply, like outside of Justin Fields, to these Ohio State quarterbacks, where it's all so tailor made for them. It's so easy for them, and when they get to the NFL, it gets a lot tougher. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that moment with the Edwards touchdown run piggybacked off of here's Jim Knowles. Here's what he's got. He's going to shut him down. Oh God, he's down the sideline. That was good.
Yeah, Michigan had touchdowns of 69, 75, 45, 75 again, and 85 yards in this game. I mean, I'm no defensive coordinator, John, but maybe, just maybe, keep a safety back, just 15, 20 yards on some of those. Because some of those plays, there was nobody in the secondary for Ohio State. They were just packing the box and sending the house.
Yeah, it just inexcusable. Because Michigan, as good as they are, I think that you can point to their skill position group as like a pretty significant weakness as far as the pass catchers are concerned specifically. Your Ronnie Bell, Roman Wilson, they're fine enough, but they aren't star level talents. Luke Schoonmaker, all these guys, it's just, that's nothing compared to Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka, Julian Fleming, Cade Stover, when he's not having the frying pan hands. I can't believe that Michigan was. If you showed me that there were touchdowns in that game of those lengths, I would have said that all of them were Ohio State's.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so Ryan Day, where do we go from here? Is he on the hot seat? I think he absolutely is. He's 45-5 in his career, 1-2 against Michigan now. He's gotten flat out embarrassed the past two times those two schools have met. And it's also for the first time in 20 years, Michigan looks like it's the better program than Ohio State at this point, I would say. He's also 1-2 in the college football playoff. One win that came in the COVID year. There was only 3,000 fans in attendance in that game against Clemson. But that also got me thinking too. I think anything in 2020 should have a gigantic asterisk next to it. With the basically my thought is, if you won a championship in 2020 and you haven't won one, before that. So Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl. Tom Brady's won 6 Super Bowls before then. LeBron James won his 4th NBA title. He's won a bunch before then, but teams like the Dodgers winning their World Series in 2020, Tampa Bay getting to the World Series, Ohio State Ryan Day winning a game there. I think they should all have a nice big asterisk next to them.
Yeah. Mickey Mouse championships all around. Mickey Mouse especially for Tom Brady though. But yeah, we don't have to ruin our friendship over that one. That's okay. But
we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, but when it comes to Ryan Day, you're Ohio State. You absolutely should have really cutthroat expectations for what your coach is doing. It should be delivering a playoff berth every year. It should be getting to the Big Ten championship every year. It should be beating Michigan every year, making them the little brother that you basically did for the previous 2 decades. And now that has slipped away in what feels like such a quick amount of time, and really what amounts to just these 2 games, the last 2 games against Michigan. But it's pretty damning. And I think also you look at the long view, and I know it didn't work out the first time with Luke Fickell there, but you almost have to wonder if they're a little bit salty that Wisconsin poached what could have been their next guy up in Luke Fickell. So very interested to see what happens with Fickell at Wisconsin too. By the way, but either way, I'm not sure where Ohio State turns with this. I think that Ryan Day basically knows that he goes into next year with the target on his back, and they don't have Quinn Ewers anymore to be that next man up for CJ Stroud. So I don't really know what their succession plan is necessarily at the quarterback position. You're still going to have Trevion Henderson next year. I think a full healthy season from him would be huge. You still get Marvin Harrison and Ibuka. Who knows what's going to happen with Jackson Smith and Jigba? Just kind of an idle comment here, Dan, but do you think that he did enough in that Rose Bowl game to warrant still being a first round pick despite not playing this year, basically?
I would think so. I mean, he lit it up last year, and like the small moments that small portions that we got to see him this year, I think he played pretty well too. That guy, I mean, it's like one of those things, right, where the skill position players now you're seeing they're basically just if they're slightly nicked up, they're going to kind of shut it down because they don't want to mess with that draft spot. I mean, like look at like someone like Keishawn Butte. I mean, what are we doing with him? He hasn't had a good year by any means, but he's probably going to be a first round pick.
Right. Yeah. The longer that you go out there and have like just sort of limited production relative to like what we expect out of you, like what we saw out of Butte his freshman year or JSN last year, it starts to muddy the waters basically as far as your draft capital goes. But I basically all of this is to say that I don't think that Jackson Smith and Jigba should quite get the treatment that like Jamar Chase did for skipping the 2020 season. Like Jamar Chase absolutely stamped top 10 status with his sophomore year and his sophomore year alone. And that was the end of discussion. I think that the sample is still a little bit too small on JSN, but if he does end up declaring and he tests really well, then, I could certainly still see him going in the first.
I'm sure it will. I mean, teams need that game breaker, and he can definitely be a game breaker if he is. All right, moving on. Let's get into some of these games and these contests here. Let's start off with the Pac-12 championship game. It's a Friday night kickoff, folks. Don't miss this one. It's Friday night. It is not on Saturday. It's in Las Vegas. Number 11, Utah versus number 4, USC. USC is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under in this one is at 68 points. It's a rematch of that offensive thriller from back in October, which saw the Utes come storming back multiple times to beat USC at Rice-Eccles 43-42. There was the dramatic 2-point conversion at the end of the game by Cameron Rising. I mean, Kyle Whittingham with that gutsy call to go for 2, less than a minute left to go. A few of the notables in that one, John. Caleb Williams was 25 of 42, 381 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks, absolutely just balling out, another 57 yards rushing. But it was not enough for USC as their defense was just not very good at all in that one. Caleb Williams Mario Williams and Jordan Addison both going over 100 yards for that one. For the Trojans, Cameron Rising having his best game of the season, 30 completions, 415 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, had another 60 rushing yards too. And then tight end Dalton Kincaid with possibly the best stat line in tight end history, 16 catches, 234 yards, and a touchdown. But for Utah this weekend, both Rising and Kincaid are a little banged up. So can Utah keep up in this one?
So I think the key stat to me going into this, as you look at Caleb Williams' number, obviously he's basically locked up the Heisman at this point. And he had a ton of success against this Utah team the first time out. But I still look at the sum and total of this season, and Utah does a great job of just slowing its opponents down offensively with that lockdown defense that we is rare in the Pac-12, but it's part of the brand as far as Utah is concerned. Their opposing teams against Utah are averaging under 60 plays per game, so that just kind of shrinks the pie overall for Williams's like passing volume. Although I will say, with Travis Dye now being out for the season, and I'm kind of looping this back to our analysis going into Williams' game against UCLA a couple weeks ago, where it's like, okay, maybe like he just simply is the offense this time around. But I'm going to lean on the numbers here. I'm going to say that Williams comes up a little bit short of this one. I think that he won't be as effective on a per pass basis, and I think that Utah keeps that USC offense on the sideline just enough to keep Williams under 330.5.
Yeah, this Utah pass defense is actually it's not terrible, despite what Caleb Williams did to them last time. I also think that USC is going to get up big in this one, and they're not going to need Caleb Williams to throw as much in this one. Because you remember, like the last time these two teams met, USC blew a 2-touchdown lead, so Williams is like forced to throw again, and he has to. So he picked up a bunch of yardage that way late. Where I think this time USC is going to be a little smarter.
I think, yeah. So either way we're slicing it here, where you're expecting more of like a USC beatdown or me, like just thinking that Utah slows USC down a little bit. Either way, I think that this number is a bit high for Williams.
All right, Cameron Rising, 265.5 passing yards. He's thrown for 266 or more in just 2 games this season, and he hasn't come close to this number since that previous meeting between these two schools. USC, though, they rank 110th in the country against the pass. They're allowing over 260 yards per game. Does this set up nicely for Rising to hit the more?
I'm thinking no. I think that Rising, like you said, his first time out against USC was mostly an anomaly, and that's been proven out over this last month and a half. He was surgical last week against Colorado, but again, that was against Colorado. So I think that we're going to see Rising. I think we're going to see him more in like the 225, 235 type of range. So I'm taking the less on him as well.
All right, let's talk a couple skill position guys. Jordan Addison, 87.5 receiving yards. It's been a real case of feast or famine with Addison this season, especially lately, John. He's reached 88 yards in just 4 of 10 games. But what are we going to see out of him Friday night?
I do think that he rises to the challenge, and I think that he can get 87 while Williams still stays under that number. So I like Addison to kind of show out here in one of his final college games, give me the more.
All right, Dalton Kincaid coming off that monster game the last time these two teams met. 70.5 receiving yards is his more or less. He hit the more on this number in each of the past 2 games as well. Can he make it 3 in a row?
Yeah, I mean, he's a beast, and you kind of have to think about the rest of the kind of team context where there's just not a whole lot of pass catching talent on this Utah team outside of Kincaid. So, Brant Kuithe being out has been a big reason behind Kincaid's success this year, but he was a touchdown machine last year, eight touchdowns on 36 catches. He has that same number of touchdowns this year on 30 more catches. So he hasn't been quite as effective there, but I mean, still extremely effective overall. I think that he is, if Utah's going to the air, it's probably going in his direction, give me the more.
All right. And does USC punch their ticket to the college football playoff?
I'll say yes, but I feel a little bit queasy about it. I think that Utah is just kind of a uniquely tough team. They're sort of like the wild card of the Pac-12 because they don't really play like anybody else. And obviously the way that the first time bore out, we saw Utah get the win. Again, that was at Rice-Eccles Stadium, so things will be different on the neutral site. USC knows what's in front of them. Utah knows what's in front of them. They're basically just playing spoiler, playing for a Pac-12 championship. That's not nothing, but I think USC gets it done here.
Yeah, I think they do too. Give me USC 34, Utah 21.
All right, we'll take it.
All right, moving on. Big 12 championship game. That's at AT&T Stadium, Jerry World in Arlington. Number 10, Kansas State versus number 3, TCU. The Frogs are favored by 2.5. The over-under this one is 62 points. This is our only top 10 matchup of the weekend as well, by the way. It's a rematch from late October. TCU came away with that one 38-28. The Frogs had to rally down double digits in the second half to get the win. Few of the notables in that one: Max Duggan, 17-26, 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. Couldn't get anything going on the ground, though, in that one. Kendre Miller, he had a day. He ran for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Will Howard, 13-20, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Deuce Vaughn, 12 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches, 38 yards. So let's talk about Will Howard here, John. 250.5 passing yards. This is more or less an MKF. He's thrown for more than 250 in just 2 of 5 games this season. And now there's some reports that Adrian Martinez is going to get some snaps in this one, that they have some packages designed for him. TCU ranks 87th against the pass. How do you see this game playing out for Howard?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with less here. Obviously, on just 20 attempts against TCU last time out, it was 225. So, I mean, like that's a really good per throw efficiency from Howard, but I think that they are going to hem him in a little bit. And like you said, we haven't really seen a ton of explosive performances from him other than like the OK State game as far as passing yardage is concerned. So I think that this sets up where Will Howard in Kansas State, I think just in general, probably wants to play a possession style. And I think that suits, feeding Deuce Vaughn. And when Adrian Martinez is in there, if he's right, then he's definitely going to be running the ball a good bit, that turns clock a little bit more. So I'm thinking that this comes in as a less for Will Howard this time around.
I like the less here too. I think this is probably like my favorite play of the entire weekend. I don't think Will Howard's going to have enough opportunity to get to 250 in this one. Max Duggan on the other side, 250 and a half yards as well. 20 and a half fantasy points for Duggan too, John. He's thrown for 251 or more in 8 of 11 starts this season, but just once in the last 4 games. K-State ranked 54th against the pass, allowing 214 yards per game.
Right. So it's been a little bit lackluster from Duggan, just kind of like played his way out of the Heisman a little bit over this last month. I mean, they barely scraped out that win against Baylor a couple of weeks back. But I still feel like if TCU is gonna win this game the way that they should, I think that it's going to involve a lot of Max Duggan production through the air. So I know the K-State tough defensively, one of the tougher teams that he has faced over the course of this season, but even still, I think that Duggan hits them more in this spot. I don't know why his name is giving me so much trouble. I'm like pronounced it like 5 different ways in just like 30 seconds, but here we are. But give me the more for Duggan.
All right, very good. Yeah, I like the more there as well for him. And then the running backs in this one, both Kendre Miller and Deuce Vaughn, both sitting at 105 and a half, more or less for those two. Who has the better day?
I'm sad. Someone tweeted this out last week, but it's like I'm gonna miss Deuce Vaughn on Saturdays. Like this is so tailor made for him. Like I don't know if he'll be as good in the NFL. Thankful for what he's given us over these last 3 years. You know what? For old time's sake, give me the more on Deuce.
Yeah, and I'm looking. I was doing some, doing my research here before the show. Deuce Vaughn is like putting up numbers like that only Christian McCaffrey has put up. Here we go. So Vaughn's currently at just over 1,200, just shy of 1,300 rushing yards and 348 receiving yards this season. And then he put up over 1,400 rushing and over 800 receiving last year. According to ESPN, in the past 15 seasons, only one Power 5 running back, Christian McCaffrey, has had multiple seasons of 1,300 rushing yards and 300 receiving yards. So it's been quite the career in Manhattan for.
And I bet McCaffrey's volume was way higher than Vaughn's. At least, yeah, no, I think in both as a runner and as a pass catcher, I think Deuce Vaughn like doesn't always have like those crazy like 25 touch games.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think? Hypnotoad, advance? Do they survive?
So yeah, this one is the biggest question mark. I mean, it's a very low spread in this one, just like 2.5 points. So it makes you wonder. And I think that Kleiman's done a really great job at K-State. That I think the sort of sleight of hand that they're doing with their quarterback situation puts this one up in the air. But I feel like TCU that they overcame their big kind of potential letdown spot against Baylor a couple of weeks ago. I think that they know that they can punch their ticket here. I think that they end up winning this one and covering. So give me the Frogs. All glory to the Hypnotoad.
Yep. Give me the Frogs. Love them. All right, moving on. SEC championship game in Atlanta in John's backyard. Number 14, LSU. Number 1, Georgia. Georgia, 17 and a half point favorites. The over-under in this one is 51. This was the last time we saw the Bulldogs lose, was in this game. But I don't think LSU has the quarterback talent to pull off what Alabama did last year. John, how are you feeling?
Yeah, that same here. This isn't a particularly good LSU team. It was an LSU team that, if I were concerned about it, it was just kind of based on the fact that they started to get really hot at the right time. But I thought that they were still playing maybe a little bit over what that roster would tell you that they should be playing at. So, they have the letdown game against A&M. LSU, I believe, has given back some of their ticket allotment. So this is going to be basically a home game for Georgia. And that bodes ill, I think, for LSU in this spot. So I'm not saying that Georgia, wins by that comfortable of a margin, the 17 and a half, because I don't believe that Georgia has really been playing their best of late. I mean, I don't know what's up with Stetson Bennett. They get down early against Georgia Tech. What's going on here? They kind of grind it out against Kentucky. So I think this is a low scoring game that's like, it's very clear who's going to win this game, but on the scoreboard, it might not look all that lopsided.
Yeah. Let's put Stetson Bennett's number at 260, more or less.
I'm taking less. I think that they're going to lean on the ground game in this spot, try to limit the amount of damage that Harold Perkins can inflict via the blitz. So I think that it's going to be kind of a Stetson game manager mode in this particular spot. So give me the less.
Perkins has had a really good season, but I saw this stat that in LSU's 3 losses, 0 sacks. So pretty much the key is keep that guy away from your quarterback, and you're going to beat LSU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that absolutely checks out. That guy is ridiculous.
But does Georgia cover in this one?
I'm saying no. I like LSU in the points as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to bet this game, I think I like the over more than anything else. At 50, I think I like this one to go slightly over that.
50, we can get to 50. We'll get there.
Yeah, I like a 31-21 kind of game there, which will just barely scrape over. We'll sweat that one out. But yeah, that's what I like in this one. I like the over. So, like John, a couple other fun games here. We got the American Athletic Championship with UCF and Tulane. We got the ACC game, the Big Ten game as well. What else are you looking forward to this weekend?
I think Friday night could be fun. Not only do we have that USC game, but half an hour before that, we got UTSA versus North Texas. The over-under in that one is like close to 70. So if you like points, tune into that one. Make sure that you have like your previous channel set up to that one for when you're watching USC Utah. I don't think that we're going to see a ton of there's going to be no joy in this Michigan-Purdue game. It's going to be very similar to the game for Michigan last year in the Big Ten championship. And boy, what a dud of an ACC championship we have on our hands here with North Carolina blowing it a couple weeks ago against Georgia Tech, Clemson blowing it against our guy Spencer Rattler last week. So there's really no juice in that one. Like maybe the best, or you could put the UCF Tulane game ahead of a couple other of these Power 5 championship games as far as watchability is concerned. Roll wave.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you know that Jeff Brom is 3-0 against top 3 teams since becoming the head coach at Purdue? Because I've only seen that stat like 87 times in the last 3 days.
Just watching the Josh Jackson interception game against Ohio State from a few years back. Yep. Good stuff. Love that game.
I'm not expecting much out of the Boilermakers. Aiden O'Connell is back at practice. He's been dealing with that family tragedy off the field, but he is back. I don't think that's going to help Purdue much in this one. And even if Blake Corum doesn't play, which it doesn't sound like he's going to, I think Michigan's going to roll pretty easily.
Yeah, they're in good hands. With Donovan Edwards, the way that he played last week, I think they have no concerns in the backfield for this particular game. Moving forward, if they don't have Corum, could be an issue, but Saturday, no.
Yep. So it doesn't sound like you're expecting much chaos this weekend, John. Are our 4?
I'm not.
Are 4 already locked in?
I'm thinking so. But that always lulls you into that false sense of security. So I think if there is one team that's on upset watch, it's probably USC. But it's hard to beat the same one team twice in the same year. So bear that in mind. But that could also be said about TCU against K-State. So I'm not taking chaos off the table, but as far as my picks are concerned, I'm rolling with the chalk.
Yeah, I'm not either, and I've been invited to an ugly sweater party this Saturday night. I'm not feeling bad about going and missing much of that. Those 8 o'clock games, I don't think they're going to be.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube page at Monkey Knife Fight, and good luck in your contest this championship Saturday.